Ethan Cole had always valued peace over attention. His lakeside cabin sat at the edge of the county, surrounded by tall pines and still water that reflected the sky like glass. He kept to himself, repairing old furniture and enjoying the quiet life. But peace rarely lasts when control-obsessed people get involved. One morning, a luxury SUV rolled up to his gravel driveway. Out stepped a sharply dressed woman with a clipboard, Diane Harrow, the head of the local HOA. Her eyes scanned the property with immediate disapproval. Without greeting, she declared the cabin violated community standards. Ethan simply smiled. He knew something she didn't. Diane returned the next day with printed notices. According to her, Ethan's cabin needed to be corrected or he'd face penalties. She spoke loudly, as if the trees themselves needed to hear her authority. Ethan remained calm, barely reacting. Neighbors watched from a distance. They knew Diane's reputation. She had forced dozens of people into expensive changes just to maintain her version of perfection. But Ethan didn't argue. He just asked one question. "Are you sure this property falls under your authority?" Diane smirked. "Of course it does." That was her first mistake. Within days, Diane escalated things. She filed formal complaints, issued fines, and even posted notices on Ethan's door. Still, he didn't comply. Frustrated, Diane took it further. She contacted local law enforcement, claiming Ethan was refusing lawful HOA orders and occupying property in violation of community rules. 2 officers arrived at the cabin one afternoon. Ethan welcomed them politely, while Diane stood nearby, arms crossed in victory. The officers asked Ethan for identification and documentation. He calmly went inside and returned with a single folder. Everything was about to change. The officers reviewed the documents carefully. Their expressions shifted from neutral to confused, then to respectful. They turned to Diane. "Ma'am, this property is not under your HOA." Diane's confidence cracked. "That's impossible." But the officers continued. "In fact, this land falls under a private county jurisdiction." Ethan finally spoke, his voice steady. "I didn't think I'd need to mention it, but I own this entire county section." Silence filled the air. Diane's world tilted. What Diane didn't know was that Ethan wasn't just a quiet man in a cabin. He was the legal owner of vast, undeveloped land surrounding the area, including the very roads and access points the HOA depended on. Her authority stopped exactly where his land began, and unfortunately for her, that was everywhere. Word spread quickly among neighbors. The same people Diane had pressured for years began to realize something important. She had no real control here, and Ethan had all of it. Days later, a formal notice was sent not from the HOA, but to it, Ethan exercised his legal rights as the landowner. HOA access roads under review, shared maintenance agreements reevaluated, operational permissions suspended pending compliance, and then came the final blow. HOA operational costs increased dramatically due to new land use terms. In simple terms, dues went up significantly. Diane's authority faded almost overnight. Without control of the surrounding land, her influence weakened, and the HOA was forced to restructure under stricter, fairer guidelines. For the first time, residents felt relief. As for Ethan, he returned to his quiet routine. The lake remained calm, the trees whispered in the wind, and the cabin stood untouched, because sometimes the quietest person holds the greatest power, and the loudest voice learns the hardest lesson.